Okay, it's recording now, Dad. Okay, I'd really like if you tell your story about the goat again.
Well, my first memory of the Moselle house, well, practically all of my memory of the Moselle house was when we got there, or was moved in there. Well, Uncle Iggy we come in, and Uncle Iggy had been there and brought us a goat. Boy, I wanted to see that goat above all things. And it was in the cowshed little building in the backyard. So we went out there and looked in there, and here was the goat in this cowshed, and it was a grown nanny goat. And she was as wild as a deer. And there was a rope on her like a plow line.
What color was she?
She was black with a little bit of white about on her.
Did she have horns? Or?
She had horns, black horns. Her horns was black, and she was backed up in the corner of that stall just as far back as she could get, and that rope was around her neck, and it was laying to the door, the rope was. And there was a little iron pot, like a stove pot, sitting in front of her, and it was level full of corn. I think Bruce had fed it.
He would have been 6 years old then.
Yeah, that's right. But anyway, that was the last I remember of that goat being in that shed with that rope on her. Because I know as quick as Papa got there, well, he began to get the maneuver things to where the goat could get the rope off and get outside where he could get something to eat and some water or whatever, you know. And then the next thing I remember about that goat was that goat had twin babies, both nannies. And Bruce and me picked them out. And one of them had a white horn and a black horn, and more white than black on the goat, and that was mine. Bruce picked the other one, and it looked more like its mother. It had both black horns and was more black.
Yeah.
And it proved that way, too, because it was wild like the old mama goat was. She was the matriarch of our goat business.
They weren't really milk goats, were they?
No,
or were
they were just they were called Piney Woods goats, just scrub goats. They were good animals and small or whatever. Well, the bucks got to be quite a size. But anyway, we continued to own goats as long as we lived in Moselle. And when we moved away from Moselle, we had 25 or 30 head of goats, in spite of all the depredations that had gone on against our goats all this time, because they just run at large. It wasn't no stock law or anything. And they stayed under old houses, and they'd come to the gin once in a while. They'd come by our place once in a while, and we'd always get corn and go out and feed and throw corn to them. But they wouldn't come back to see us on a regular basis. Bruce and me would run those animals on weekends and times, and we'd catch them. Sometimes we'd get a pretty good bunch of them in the pen somewhere, somehow.
Did you ever eat one?
Yeah, we'd eat one every now and then. Papa was a great hand to butcher goats.
So that'd be in the fall, or?
Just any time of the year. We had no refrigeration, and a half-grown kid was small, and you could cook him all at one time, you know. But it was nice, fresh meat.
Is it mostly dark meat?
No, it's like beef.
Okay.
A little lighter than beef, I'd say, a little bit. Yeah, it's not as red a meat as beef is. No, it's not. And it's fine. It's nice. It's neat. And Mama knew how to cook it good, and Papa knew how to dress them. We always had good luck with our eating goats.
So did those young ones become essentially tame pets, or not?
It depended on how much you could get to them and pet them, feed them. and not mistreat them. An animal has fear according to the treatment it gets. Well, everybody looked down their nose at goats, you know, and they'd throw chunks at them, and they said they'd eat tin cans and stuff like that.
Abuse them, yeah.
And they'd sick the dogs on them, and the goats were more or less harassed. But they kept the briar patches around town cleaned up, and they did a lot of good. And they didn't do anybody any harm. I don't ever remember anybody belly aching about the goat. But after we moved away from Moselle, I had one big buck that some people had stole when he was young, and they tamed him and trained him and worked him.
Oh.
And then they moved back to town, or they moved to town, and moved in a house right next to us.
Good grief.
And the goat, he just took right back with a bunch of goats. And
Brothers
my
and
goat
sisters.
had come back home, and I just clamped on to him. And he was a champion. He was a big feller. They fed him corn like crazy. But those people never did say a word about that goat. And they had all this pretty wagon and goat harness and stuff up there around their house, you know.
Huh.
And so when we moved to seminary, one day Papa and me was at Moselle and was at the gin. We still had the gin there, you see. And as we was moving, so when we got ready to go home that evening, I had got old Bill and brought him down there and tied him. So when we got in the car to go home, I just had the T-Model Ford, and I opened the back door and let him up in there and closed the door and got in the front seat and just had the rope over the seat, that string or whatever had him tied with. He's gentle as he could be, you know. Probably lay down in there. But anyhow, that was how Bill got moved to seminary.
Was this a car or a truck?
A car.
How about that?
He just stood in the floorboard, you see, in
Yeah.
front of the back seat.
Okay.
And so we got to seminary. Well, Bill, I unloaded him, took him around there to the cow stalls and the horse stalls we had behind the house, and fed him good and introduced him around there. And it wasn't more than the next evening or the next evening before I just turned him loose.
How about that?
But I worked him and introduced him to the neighborhood and the community. All knew it was my goat. I had a good two-wheel goat wagon, and I carried him all over the place around there. But he went and did the wrong thing. He took up on the depot platform.
Oops.
And the depot agent couldn't put up with that at all. And Papa didn't give me no help. Papa would let us root, hog, or die with whatever we put into it. I was always free to offer advice to my children. But Papa, if you didn't ask him, he would let you
Learn on your own, huh?
Yes, he did. He was great at that. He certainly didn't impose his thing on us. Well, Bill died, so I learned later that the depot agent poisoned the goat.
You told before I had got the tape connected here about your very first memories. Yeah.
Well, I reckon my first memory, and it could be that they repeated it so much until that had more to do with me remembering it than anything, you know. But it seems like I can remember the cotton gin or the grist mill that Papa had in East Butchie. I think I was about 2.5 years old when we left there. But I do remember one time Bruce would run away.
Oh, he would?
Yeah, and quick as I got big enough to follow him, well, I went with him. And he, first time I run away with Bruce.
Now, this is in East Butchie?
In East Butchie.
How about that, Dad?
And we had run away, and when Mama found us, she had found us at a hole of water, a little lake. where kids will go, you know. And Bruce picked up a stick and handed it to me and said, "Here, Vic, hit her with it."
Oh, he did? Oh,
Yeah, I
Daddy.
remember taking the stick. Bruce handed me and told me to hit Mama with a stick,
Good
you know.
grief, isn't that something?
She was chasing us, catching us, you know, we'd run away.
He was 4.5 and you were
Yeah,
2.5.
that's right, and I was 2.5. But anyhow, he said, "Here, Vic, hit her with it." And Mama just picked me up, stick and all. You know.
Yeah.
Evidently, that's one of my first memories. Different things happened, but there was things happening around East Butchie, quite a few things that I have vague pictures of.
Good, yeah.
And then the family talked about these things that happened so much until those will imprint themselves in your mind and you'll imagine that you remember them, when in reality you didn't really remember.
How many people lived in East Butchie at this time, dear?
Sister, there were several hundred people lived there. There was a big operation there, that sawmill alone. Of course, it was the whole thing, but then there was other little things that...
There was no mayor or city official, so it wasn't a city in that sense, was it? It was
I'm
just
not sure that it ever incorporated or not. I don't believe it did, but it
Okay.
might have. I don't know just what they had there. Usually they had those little places like that, they would have a constable.
Okay.
The county had 5 beats, and there was 5 justices of the peace. There was a justice of peace for each beat, and then each justice beat had a constable who was a deputy, sheriff's deputy.
Okay.
But he was the officer for the J.P. Court.
Okay.
He served the papers for the Justice Court, and he presided and kept order at the Justice Court. If they had a prisoner, he brought him there and had him at the court. So he was the officer for the court.
Both Moselle and East Butchie are in Jones County, is that right? So Laurel is the county seat.
Ellisville and Laurel was the county seat. It was one of them
A dual.
counties that had 2 county sites.
How about that?
Yeah. Smith County, Raleigh, and
Harrison County has 2.
Mize, I believe, were the 2 county seats in Smith County.
You're pretty sure you can remember learning to spit between your teeth.
Well, I know I can remember that, but now
That's-
that was the year we moved away from East Butchie to Carson.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And who was it again that you saw do it?
A big black man that was yellow.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
a mulatto. Half-breed, they called him. Whatever. He was a big, fine feller, and he was there at the depot, and Papa carried me down there to get a newspaper Sunday morning. And the
So-
passenger train come through, and that was on the Mississippi Central that run from Hattiesburg up to Summerall. I don't know how much further it went. Maybe to Prentice.
That would have been a Hattiesburg paper then, or Laurel
It
paper?
was a
maybe?
Hattiesburg paper. Or it might have been a New Orleans paper. See, they would swap them. Say in Hattiesburg, they'd dump a lot of them papers there, and then these other
Yeah.
boys would pick them up and take them out on these other runs, you see. But it was a Sunday paper. Papa would go down every Sunday morning and get a paper. And he carried me with him that morning, and I was looking over his shoulder while he was standing there. The train was pulled up.
So you were up in his arms.
I was in his arms looking over his shoulder, and this man spit between his teeth. And it fascinated me, and I tried it, and it worked. No problem at all. And then I went spit between my teeth, and then they wondered about it, and they went to discouraging me
Yeah.
spitting between my teeth.
I bet the women did it particularly.
Yeah, they did. Most all the blacks spit between their teeth.
Wasn't a class thing to do.
That's right. And I didn't see a thing wrong with it. And I did it up till I was half grown. And then I finally just quit it. That was in Carson. Another thing happened in Carson, and I remember this. I remember seeing people on a road grader, a grading machine, a machine that they graded the roads with. They
Yeah.
only had dirt roads.
Right.
And they had mules pulling about 5 big mules hitched to a grader, and they could roll the dirt out of the ditches. And the old grader moves so slow, these animals were pulling and the thing moved slow. And the man would step up on the hub of that wheel, and it would turn in his shoe,
Good grief, Daddy.
you see, and he'd hold on to the machine and just stand on that hub. It was slowly turning under his shoe. His heel would be against it. And I saw that, and that fascinated me. And then the first Papa was getting the wagon ready, and I think they said we was moving from Carson. And the wagon come along, and I thought, well, I'll just catch that wheel and step up on that hub and ride it like that guy did, you know. And of course I caught the wheel,
Oh, the rim.
yeah, or the spokes. And I just tumbled over in front of the wheel, and the darn wagon rolled over me and like killed me.
Where did it hit you, Dad?
Across my chest, rolled across my chest, mashed all the breath out of me, and I was blue in the face, and it had me up running and blowing in my face and whacking me and getting me to breathe again. And finally I did go to breathing again. But I think is there any more, baby? I think that these bones here, one of them was crooked for a long time.
How about that? One of the clavicles.
Yeah. But
So did you stay in bed several days after that? And-
Yeah, they would. They'd keep us in places. Let me help Eleanor get these.
Yeah. Knowing your early memories.
Of course.
Exactly. And you had described before the coffin being moved out the
Yeah.
window. Was that in Carson?
That was in Carson where they had the death.
Was it black or white folks?
No, it was white person. And they had the wake, and they was bringing the coffin out of the house, carry him to the cemetery. And they couldn't get the coffin. It wouldn't come through the door without turning it up, you know. So they brought it to a window. The window was wider than the door, I suppose.
The coffin wasn't nailed shut or anything. They just closed it, huh?
It was the casket itself.
Yeah.
It wasn't in a box. The box, they had it at the cemetery as a rule.
It had been made there locally, though, right?
No, I suppose that it was a bought casket.
Oh, okay.
I never saw too many homemade caskets. In fact, the one homemade casket that impressed me the most was the one we made at the cotton gin there one time after I was grown.
Okay.
And Mr. Napier, the carpenter that Papa had working there at the mill, I believe that boy was a cub pepper
The one that died.
that died. He drank some poisoned whiskey, and I think he was 17 years old.
Oh, it was a tragedy.
And and his brother, maybe Ab, worked at the gin. Luther knew him and was related to him, whatever. So he was working there for Papa in building, and they had lumber there, and so Uncle Nate Watkins had a hand in it. He was there. It was before ginning season. And so they just pitched in and built a coffin right there out of the lumber that Papa had there, and Mr. Napier, the carpenter, he built it.
Now, that was in seminary?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he was a fancy carpenter. He's the man that built that gear wheel, that wooden gear wheel I told you about out at that water mill.
Now, this is Mr. Watkins? No, this is...
Luther Napier.
Okay, sorry.
Luther Napier. And he was a gifted mechanic. That man was a genius. But he whipped that coffin together there before you could say Jack Robinson. And Uncle Nate Watkins went across the street there to Jack Connor's store and got some black cloth and some upholstery tacks. Come back over there, and they went up in the gin and scrounged up some cotton put a pad in the bottom of the coffin, you know, made a pillar in it like, and covered it all over with that cloth. I reckon they lined it with it too. They might have lined it with some white stuff, I don't know. But anyhow, when they put the cloth on it, they tacked it about in different little places on the edges with carpet tacks and things, and then they put these pretty burnished head upholstery tacks on corners and key points on it, you know, and it looked real nice.
Good, yeah.
It sure did. And he put the lid on it, and he drove the nails. He nailed the lid down on it. You see, the edge of the box come up, just the thickness of the 3/4 lumber was the edge of the box. And the lid fit that, and he'd marked it off and trimmed the lid to fit just the box pretty. And it was a coffin-shaped coffin, you know,
It was angular.
diamond-shaped
Okay.
coffin. And he put the lid on it, and he drove 8 penny nails down through the lid into the edge of the coffin. And he drove them down to within 1/4 of an inch of being all the way up. And then he got a little block of wood and went around. He put about 2, 4, 6, or maybe 8 nails in the lid and drove them every one down to within 1/4 of an inch of being all the way down. And then he took a little block of clean wood and he went around to each nail and took his claw hammer and put
Backed
on
it
that
up.
little block
Mhm.
and pulled that nail straight out until it come up and left about 1/4 of an inch of nail on the bottom side of that board sticking out. So when they went to put that lid on that coffin, they could shuffle it around until every one of them nails went in the hole.
How about that?
And then they'd take a hammer and go around them and bring them all down and then finally tighten them down. And it just amounted to I'd love to be buried in a coffin that good right when I die.
Had they measured the coffin for the man?
Yeah, they knew how high and tall he was. Luther built so many of them. He knew what. They always build them a little bit big, maybe, you know.
Good, okay.
But if
And
you
it
look
was-
at a coffin and they wonder how they get a man in it, you know, and then go look and see he's actually in there. Well, you think about it, well, it sure fits good, you know. Yeah.
It was made out of pine?
No, Papa had, Mr. Watson had the local mill up there, had just got a little planing machine in up there, and it would only dress a 6-inch plank. And he always, Mr. Watson he always cut a lot of hardwood, and he had some poplar,
Oh,
and he had dressed a whole world of poplar, and Papa had bought several thousand feet of poplar lumber from him, and it was all in a pile there at the gin, and we was using it for just everything. So that's what the coffin come out of, was that pretty poplar, green looking hard poplar lumber. It was real nice.
I don't know where to go from there. Going back to the early memory of the window
Yeah,
incident, that coffin came from where, since it was manufactured?
it would more than likely come from Hattiesburg. Carson's not too far the other side of Hattiesburg. And then
So
that
it'd come out on
railroad-
the train.
That railroad
Yeah.
comes from Hattiesburg to Carson every day, don't you see? So, I don't know to save my life just exactly where Carson is to this day, except it's west of Hattiesburg. I've been through Carson, but it's been a long time, and we didn't go through there often, you know. But that was the memories of Carson.
Do you have any idea who had died in that particular incident?
No, when Mama died, that took that memory away. Mama could have told me in a minute
Okay.
who that were. There was a family of Millmans, M-I-L-M-A-N-S, Millmans, lived close to us there.
Yeah.
And they were the ones that had the boarding house and 4 or 5 girls, daughters. And one of them had the little black child. And those things caught my mind. And I don't even remember the cotton gin at Carson. You know,
Yes.
seeing it.
Well, you were home. You weren't at the
Right.
cotton gin. See.
That's right. Exactly. But now when we got back to Moselle, and that cotton gin there, boy, I'm telling you, I got about the right size to take in on that one. And they wasn't one thing. I was by it, like Mr. Fisher said, his little grandson was about that tractor. He said they ain't a bolt or a nut on that tractor that kid don't know where it is.
How about
Where
that?
it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, every single one of them. When you take them off, he'd watch you, you know, just. But anyway, I can remember the ends of the shafts turning in the gin machinery, you know, the spinning shafts, and they all had a lathe center mark in the end of the shaft, a little V-shaped hole in the end of the shaft. And I was always picking up cottonseed, sticking in it, trying to get a cottonseed to stick in the end of that spinning shaft, you know. Never did get one to stay.
What was your first memory of Uncle Bruce or of Sis? Do you remember when Sis was first born, or do you remember?
No, I think that my first memory of sister was probably at Ferguson place, but I think I can remember Mama carrying her around some
As an infant.
at Carson, like in there. She would, and one of my first memories of sister was Mama combing her hair and curling it.
Oh.
She had bobbed hair, and Mama would dampen her hair and comb it, and then she'd pick up so much hair with a comb and twist it, and her hair was just as curly as it could be, and it'd just make one big long curl.
Ringlets. Yeah.
She just put them around all around her head. You know, she had this dozen big curls around her head. And I can remember, I really remember seeing Mama by the fire, you know, or on the porch, fixing sister's hair. And then I can remember her squealing. And Uncle Abe said that Bruce and me was chasing her all the time.
Oh, he did.
And he knew what was going on because he could hear little sister squealing. You know.
Did you almost always call her little sister or sis or?
We called her sister, and as we got bigger, we called her sis.
Yeah. Okay.
Sister.
Where
And
did?
we called Bruce brother.
Oh, you did.
Yeah, that was.
Sis still calls him that, doesn't she? Yeah.
Yeah, most all families and Granny's family all called Mama sister and Uncle Eugene brother.
The first and the second child, or
The
what?
oldest girl and the oldest boy were called brother and sister.
Huh.
Yes, sir. You better believe they did, and that was there was a little reverence went with that. The oldest boy was. They didn't challenge him too much. He was considered next to his parents. You see, he looked after, tell them what to do or not, what not to do. Right.
So maybe you can remember following Uncle Bruce around, or?
Yeah, and one other thing that happened at the Moselle house after the goat. 3 things I remember at the Moselle house. The goat was the first one, and the next one, Uncle Eugene come to visit us. And when he come in, he was whittling on a little piece of stick with his knife. And he was cutting such pretty little shavings off that little soft stick with that knife. And boy, I just had to have that knife. And he said, no, you can't have this knife. It's too sharp. You'll cut yourself with it.
Yeah, you were 4 years old.
Is that right?
Well, in Moselle, you moved to Moselle in 1912.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
you were 5 maybe, or whatever.
Yeah, and I had to have that knife. And he finally said, okay, I'm going to let you have it, but you're going to have to be careful. And right there, that scar, first whack I made, I just cut that finger half off with it.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boy, I surrendered that knife quick.
What response did the family administer?
Oh, well, I got the turpentine or the kerosene oil doused on it and then wrapped it up with a rag string. That was a standard treatment for a cut off finger, half cut off finger. And then my next memory of that place was she made our clothes, and I had on some little rompers, they called them. They were just little knee length, one piece
Overall
rompers.
affairs.
Yeah. And I guess they had a button around the knee, where you could button them up and tuck them up around the knee. And I was playing out in that front yard. I might have been doing that the day Uncle Gene come with that knife. But I had got a hold of a box of empty capsules. You could buy capsules and put different medicines in them, And Mama had give me that box of things, and I was out there filling them with dirt. And I didn't have any pockets in my clothes.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
they had an opening on the sides there, and I just tied the leg of it tight. Put the dirt, capsules and all down in my britches leg, and I had just a great big bag around that leg full of dirt and stuff. And when Uncle Gene come, I unbuttoned that knee and shook all that dirt and stuff fell out. And another thing I remember when we lived at that place, Mr. Tisdale, who owned the blacksmith shop, was nearby in sight of this house. And he had a little shed in back of the blacksmith